Israeli media is now circulating information that Israel is preparing for joint strikes with the United States against Iran to potentially strike deep within the Fordham nuclear facility, which Israel has tried bombarding, as well as the Isfahan nuclear facility, which the IAEA warns against potential nuclear contamination spreading to surrounding regions in the event there are extensive strikes in the area here. But what you can see is Israelis' mainstream media is talking up these refueling flights, about 35 refueling carriers moving from the United States to the Middle East. It appears Israel is really promoting this idea that, hey, the Americans are coming and that we have the upper edge here. Not only have the Americans as well as the British Royal Air Force been involved in defensive attacks, I shouldn't say attacks, but defenses against the Iranian incoming missile strikes, shooting down drones or intercepting missiles on their way over to Israel. The United States and Royal Air Force have been positioning Nimitz-class carriers. I've started sending one over today, for example, from Asia to the Middle East. The Royal Air Force is lining up even more munitions for the region. And a lot of people believe, including what we talked about in my video this morning on an Iran update, that the positioning of these troops is really messaging for, hey, listen, we're putting the troops in place. If we need to strike together, we will. And messaging is really powerful in war. It's likely that's why you had messages sent to the capital of Iran, Tehran, suggesting, hey, it's time for you to evacuate certain areas of Tehran, including the news agency building, which Israel claims had military operations going on. And what you find is that while the Iranian news station is on the air, the very building this woman is in ends up being bombed. Now, she's fine in this video and walks away from this, but I'll show you the building in just a moment. There's the strike, which appears to be a complete total loss. There's now talk that Iran, for the first time in over 40 years, has not held their timely 9 p.m. news production, frankly, because the very building that they typically base out of, the Iranian State Broadcasting Building, is toast. Here's a later in the day image from further away, and you can see the entire building is still on fire. This over an hour and a half after the building was actually struck, striking really the core of Iran's media propaganda apparatus and a live demonstration to Iranians, really, of the ability that Israel has over Tehran right now. And I think that's why the Israelis are showcasing, hey, like, look, we're doing so well against Iran, but just a heads up, we're also going to, make this claim that the United States military is willing to join in at some point in the future. Now, that claim is defeated by Donald Trump suggesting we're not looking to get involved in the war, but it's enhanced by the argument that U.S. assets are moving into the area. More aircraft carriers, more ships, more refueling vehicles, which apparently are basing in Qatar. At this particular base, I call it the You Dead Air Base. So when you get a phone call, you dead. Anyway, this is relatively close and well within striking range of the Iranian Fordow nuclear facility, which has been a discussion of a lot of concern here for the Iranians and the IAEA. Take a look at, just so you know, where Qatar is located. When you look at Israel right here, Israel really needs to fly from Israel across Syrian airspace, across Iraqi airspace, or Jordanese, right, either of these, and then Iraqi airspace. And then you can get into western portions of Iran to strike those surface-to-surface missiles that have been launched against Israel. Of course, Israel is now using smaller volleys Iran is now using smaller volleys against Israel, because the more they have their infrastructure out, the more it's targeted by Israel, which has air superiority over Tehran. But what you're also finding is, even once you get into western Iran, it takes you a while to get all the way over to Tehran. Now, here's the Azadi Tower, which we saw fire right about here. And it looked like this was really a way to try to signal how deep and close to historical artifacts the Israeli government is willing to get, given that this is a historical landmark here, the Azadi Tower. You can see this here in Tehran. And if you look closely at what some Israeli government members are posting, they're going as far as posting pictures like this, which implies the sort of Israeli domination over Iran, which the world and Iranians don't want. No, that doesn't necessarily mean we want the opposite, which would be Khamenei and his, Ayatollah and his regime, which is substantially weakening now. But it goes as far as to say, like, hey, this whole thing is messaging. The Israelis have control right now, substantially, over Iran. Iran's defenses are failing. Their attacks are mostly failing against Israel. In fairness, strikes are hitting apartment buildings and research facilities on both ends. But this suggestion that there could be some form of a joint strike between the United States and Iran may be messaging, between the United States and Israel against Iran, could be messaging to try to force a last chance deal. In fact, that's what the Jerusalem Post is now arguing. Trump expected to offer Iran a last chance proposal. This comes, by the way, as what you end up having is this morning, this Wall Street Journal leak that says, Iran wants to negotiate, they want to make this go away, like they're willing to drop their uranium enrichment, just please make this go away, essentially. At the same time, then, you have journalists such as this one from Al Jazeera English TV, Ali Hashim, who tweeted two sources, one senior Iranian official and one well-informed regional diplomat, denied to me categorically any Iranian signal to end hostilities. The Iranian official told me Israel started the war and there were no messages sent in this regard. Now, it's obviously possible that both could be true. It's possible that some people inside the Iranian government are quietly, through Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United States channels, whatever, through intermediaries, are like, dude, how can we end this? We need to resolve this because we're getting smoked over here in Iran. While at the same time, the official statement from Iran is, we're going to give you the worst bombardment you've ever seen, which is what they're publicly threatening, while publicly denouncing that they're open to negotiating a deal. Donald Trump picking up on this, saying, hey, we're open to maybe offering you a last chance deal, one that's going to include zero uranium enrichment. Because ultimately, it's not so much a worry that Iran is going to launch a nuclear weapon. It's more so that the Iranian proxies that are associated with the Iranian government, such as Hezbollah, Hamas, or the Houthis, would end up getting access to one of these strategic weapons. Now, there is also additional talk that there's movement of the United States Air Force transport aircrafts, including C-17s and C-130s, preparing to cross from mainland United States to Europe. That seems to be sort of the stopping ground. You go from the United States to Europe, and then from there you refuel, take a break, switch out pilots, and pop on over to Qatar. Current reports that there are 7 Boeing KC-46 Pegasus refueling aircraft actively on the way, or actually on the ground already in Qatar. Here's an image of one of those in the sky. Looks like any other ordinary plane from this sort of distance here. But the idea is that these refueling vehicles are quite useful for attacking Iran, given just not only keeping the firepower going without having to land, but also being able to refuel closer to the target. Again, Qatar is a very strategic location against Iran. And this is why I think it's in part messaging against Iran, because if you look at this, here's the Persian Gulf, or the Arabian Gulf, as some like to say. Here's Qatar, and look at where Iran is. And you have a very short distance to Iran, and especially the Fordow nuclear site, relative to what Israel has. Israel has a lot further of a distance to travel. If we type in here the Fordow province, which is roughly where the nuclear facility is located, they typically, it's not going to be where their bunkers are. The bunkers are usually built into their sort of ridges over here. But anyway, you just sort of look at where the city is. You could see here, relative to Qatar right here, certainly closer, and not having to violate this airspace of Syria and Iraq, while at the same time also being able to potentially refuel over the water somewhat close to the targets that you're looking to strike, including the Isfahan nuclear facility. So all of this coming together likely is signaling to Iran that, hey, we're willing to strike, and a counter, by the way, to the threats from Iran that say, hey, we're going to strike American air bases, or not just air bases, but also embassies in, let's say, Baghdad. This would be worst case scenario, that you end up getting some kind of attack by Iranians against the U.S. assets in the region, because this is how you really start integrating everyone into this conflict. You know, does China and Russia get involved? So far, the answer is no. Do the United States and British Royal Air Force get involved more deeply with potentially other partners like France against Iran just to wipe out the regime? But then again, we have the question of who's going to replace the regime, because again, just destroying a regime would just leave a power vacuum and create its own problems. So you kind of have this duality right now, where on one hand, there are these rumors that, oh yeah, we're going to strike a deal, and on the other hand, but if we don't, we're also ready to jointly strike and destroy what's left of the Iranian regime. So with that said, I guess we'll see what happens next. But in the meantime, get yourself life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. Go to metkevin.com/life, paid partner of the channel, and you can get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. All right, back to the commies.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.